Welcome to Digital Literacy, a guide to using technology and journalism. This week we're going to be talking about HTML, which is also known as Hypertext Markup Language. All right, so our goals for this week, first is we're going to learn how the web works. We're going to talk about the World Wide Web, we're going to talk about the Internet and the differences between the two of them. We're going to learn the language that's used to communicate on the web and with web browsers. And then we're going to hand code a web page so that you can get a little bit of practice in the old-fashioned way of building websites. All right, so the first term we're going to talk about is the Internet. The Internet is sort of it's the backbone for everything that we do online at this point in time. The Internet is a network of interconnected computer servers. Now, those servers store files of various types on them, and the Internet is also used to transfer data between each of those different servers. Now, each of those servers has what's called an IP address. It's an Internet Protocol address, and it's a string of numbers. Now, we don't think about the Internet in strings of numbers. We think about it in domain names. So when you type in the URL for a website, for instance, uga.edu, your web browser, the first thing that it does is it goes and it connects to something called a domain name server, or a DNS. And that DNS then says, okay, uga.edu corresponds to this numerical number, and then it can route itself to the servers that sit here in Athens, Georgia. The Internet, again, is used for transferring data. So all of your email is transferred back and forth via the Internet. We can also use it for voice communications if you're doing voice over IP, such as Skype or something along those lines. It's also used for other sorts of data transfer as well. Now, sitting on top of the Internet is the World Wide Web, www. So whenever you type in something into your browser's URL window, what you're typing in is the World Wide Web address, and it's telling your computer to go look at this server and bring back the data that's displayed on it. Now, the World Wide Web is a graphical interface to the Internet. So whereas we used to just have data files sitting on Internet servers scattered around the world in the pre-World Wide Web days, once the World Wide Web was developed, we developed this language. So when your computer browser loads one of these files, it knows what to do with it. And the reason it knows what to do with it is because there's a specific computer language called HTML. And HTML, again, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And whenever a web browser sees a file that is an HTML type file, it knows what to do with it. There's a whole string of commands that are built into it that explain to the browser how it's to display text, images, graphics, links, all different kinds of things like that. Now, the specific lines of instruction that are built into HTML are called tags. And so we're going to go through and we're going to talk about a couple of these different tags. And the first thing you need to know about tags is that tags are always going to be sitting between a set of angle brackets. Those angle brackets are the cue for a web browser to know that what's in between them is a command. It's not data to display, it's information about how to display it. So whenever you want to tell it to start doing something, there's a command that sits within those angle brackets, and whenever it's done with that command, there's going to be another set of angle brackets, but at the beginning of that one is going to be a slash. And that slash is the cue for the web browser to say, okay, stop doing something here. In between those two sets of angle brackets is going to be the stuff you want to display, whether it's text or images or graphics or a link. So remember, every command, every tag that you're going to send to a web browser has to be sitting within those angle brackets. So let's look at a couple of them. The first one that you're almost always going to see on a website is the HTML tag. And the web browser is going to load this file and it's going to start reading at the top. And as soon as it sees that angle bracket, HTML angle bracket, it knows that it's now going to translate this using the Hypertext Markup Language protocols. There's a couple of other ones out there besides HTML, including XML and XHTML, I think now, and some other codes that you'll see from time to time as well. But all we're going to worry about this week is HTML. So the first line in your document is going to be this angle bracket, HTML angle bracket, and the last line that's going to be in there is going to be an angle slash HTML angle bracket. And again, that's to tell the web browser you're done. There's nothing after here that you have to worry about. So what we'll do is we'll sit those at the beginning and the end of our HTML documents. Now, there's a whole string of other things that we need to put in there. We can put some metadata in there. And metadata is information that's not necessarily displayed, but what it does is it helps search engines, and it also helps people figure out what it is that they're looking at. So you might have some copyright information in there. You might have some search tags that you want search engines to pick up in there. You may have author information or contact information for whoever designed the website. And all of that's going to sit within a head tag, H-E-A-D. So again, you'd have an angle bracket, head, angle bracket, and then there's a whole series of different meta tags that go in there you would never use parentheses to set them off. It's just so you know what's in there. The other thing that sits inside there is something called the title. And the title is really important. The page title is what's displayed up at the top of your browser. So if you look at the very, very top line of your browser, you're going to see the page title that's in there. And this is the first thing that search engines look at to try and figure out what's in there. So getting something in there that makes sense, that accurately describes the content, will raise your search engine optimization rankings. So page title is really key, and that sits within that head tag as well. Once we're done with the head tags, we go into the body, and it's actually body is the tag that we use. So you'll see an angle bracket, body, angle bracket, and then everything after that until you get to the slash body bracket is stuff that's going to be displayed. So that's the basic structure there. There's a couple of tags that sit inside of your body commands that you want to be aware of as well, and the first of them is a /p. Now most HTML tags, most HTML commands need an open command and a close command. Again, the close command is going to be delineated by that slash. The /p is one of the few that doesn't need it. If you type in a couple of paragraphs worth of information and you just put a carriage return, a line in between them, web browsers don't understand that carriage return, and what it will do is it's going to connect them all into one run-on, never-ending paragraph. So the /p is the end of paragraph command, and what it'll do is it'll insert essentially a carriage return. So if you have multiple paragraphs, you need to put a /p within the angle brackets at the end of each one so that they separate out as individual paragraphs. The next one is what's called the href, and this is how you build the link. You do an angle bracket a space href equals quote, and then in the quotes you give the URL, the full URL to the address you want to link to, and end quote, an angle bracket. And then you put the text in that you want to become your link. At the end of the text you want to be the link, you put the /a in the angle brackets, and that will become a link in your text. If you want to insert an image, the tag for that is img space src equals quote, and again the URL that links back to where your image is that you want to draw from. Now if you want to draw a specific image that's on the web, it has to be a JPEG or a GIF type file. Most of them are going to be JPEGs. Occasionally you'll see a GIF file there as well. Now the image source is another one of those tags that doesn't have the closing brackets to it because you're inserting a specific object, and as soon as you've inserted that specific object, the web browser knows there's nothing else that you need in there. If you want to create bold text, it's just simply a B in the angle brackets and a /b to end it. And for italics, it's an I with a /i to end it at the end. Occasionally you'll also see an EM in there and a /em for emphasis, but for the most part, think about I for italics and you'll be fine. All right, now when you're hand coding one of these, you want to use a program like TextEdit on the Mac. You don't want to use Word because Word is going to embed a whole bunch of its own proprietary code into it. So you want the simplest, most basic type of a text editor that you can possibly get. So I've gone ahead here, and in TextEdit, I've created a little HTML file here, and you'll see up at the top, there's the HTML. I have the head in here, and then I have some metadata tagged right in here, and then I have the title for my page, so it just says this is the title to your page, important for SEO, a /title to finish that, a /head. So all of this information that sits in here, none of this is going to be displayed except for the title. And then have my body command, a line of text with the /p at the end of it. I've created a link in here to CNN.com because it's easy to do. I've inserted an image in here as well, and this is just the text that describes that there's going to be an image, and then here is that image linked to, and this is just off of my own Flickr account, and then demonstration of bold and italics down here. At the bottom we have the /body and the /html. So I've saved that, and if I go ahead and just double click on it, now one thing to make sure you do is you'll notice up here the file name I have saved it as johnson.html. That .html is important in TextEdit. TextEdit is normally going to want to put a .txt extension on there. You want to change that to a .html. What that does is that tells your computer to use a web browser to open it. So if I open this up, you can see that this is fairly basic here. I've got my main info is sitting here. I've got a link. I've got my image. And if I click on this link, you'll see that this brings me over to CNN.com. And now I'm sitting there on CNN. Now, if you're ever curious about how somebody has coded a web page, one of the things you can do is in Safari and Firefox, under the View menu, you can go up and click, and you can pull down to something called View Source. And I'm going to do this for CNN, and then I'm just going to quickly blow it up so that you can see it. And here is all of the HTML. Because that HTML is publicly available, you can go in and you can look at how people have done things. So, for instance, you'll see up here in this first section here, now the coding here is a little bit different on the CNN site than what I just taught you, but this is telling it that it's an HTML file. We then have the head command, our title command, and you'll see CNN.com, breaking news, U.S., world weather, entertainment, and video news sitting there within the title stuff. Right? If we scroll down quite a ways here, this is all metadata. This is all part of the CSS, the cascading style sheets that CNN uses to describe their pages. We're not going to go into CSS, but it is something that you probably want to study. You'll see down here we have the /head, that's the end of the head, and a body tag. And this is where the beginning of the content for the page is. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, you'll see that the last two things we have are the /body command and the /HTML command. They're telling the web browser. Okay, the vocab for this week. These are the phrases that you should have picked up. Internet. The internet is the worldwide connection of servers, of computers all over the place. Now, the internet is not the same as the World Wide Web because the internet handles data. This is the backbone. This is the infrastructure. The World Wide Web, or WWW as we call it, is the graphical interface that sits on top of the internet. It's one of the things that the internet is used to display. HTML, hypertext markup language, that's the computer language that web browsers read to display your images. And tags. Tags are the specific commands within HTML. Okay, your assignment for this week is going to be to create a web page by hand. You're going to come in and you're going to use TextEdit to create this. So what you want to do is build using those tags that we used before, the HTML, the head, title, and a couple of other things. So hopefully you took good notes on that. The title of your page should be your name. That's all we want in there. This is a very simple sort of a thing to do. For the body copy, let's include the bio that you created a few weeks ago in class. Just copy that, paste it into TextEdit, make sure that no extraneous tags from Word have shown up as well. So you want a proofreader to make sure that the only tags that are in there are the ones that you have put in there. I want you to take one line out of that. Let's take the first line out of your bio and make that bold. Okay? And then I want you to take the second line and make that italicized. So remember, the B and the I in the brackets are going to make things bold and italicized. And just in case you're curious, you can bold and italicize something if you want to, but you don't need to do that for this. After your one paragraph bio, you're going to want to put that /p command in there, and I want you to put in a link to Grady's website. And all I want you to do is type in, this is a link to the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communications website. Highlight that whole sentence, make that a link. Okay, so put the ahref at the beginning of it and the /a at the end of it. I also want you to include a link to a photograph. Now, we will give you in class the link to that photograph online, and it might be a little long because it's probably going to come off of a Flickr account, but we will give that to you in class so that you can do that. Then you want to save it as a .html file, and all you need to do is do a save as, and at the end of your file name, just give it your last name as the file name. So for me, it would be Johnson dot, and change the txt to .html. And what that's then going to do is allow a web browser to open it simply. And then just go ahead and drop it on the server. And you probably also want to throw it on your thumb drive just so that you have it later on. Now, before you drop it on the server, save it to the desktop. And one of the quick things that you can do is you can double click on it. If you've got a .html file extension sitting on there, it should open up right into Safari or Firefox, whichever is the default web browser on your file. So that's the rudimentary, very basic introduction to HTML. If you wanted to go and learn some more, I would do some studying on CSS, cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets allow you to define the way text is going to appear very broadly. So you can create a tag, what's called an ID, for a type of text. So you can create a cascading style sheet for headlines. And then you say, for the headlines, instead of putting in a bold and the size, which we didn't talk about in this lesson, you can say use headline for the description here. Cascading style sheets are the way most websites are designed now, but it's another level of complexity. We just wanted you to get the basics out of this. Again, as always, if you've got any questions, go ahead and ask your professor, and hopefully now you've got a basic understanding of HTML. This series was produced for the Journalism Department of the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia by a grant from the James M. Cox Institute for Newspaper Management Studies.